Welcome back to our bisexual research conference. When we envisioned this iteration, we were really thinking about diversity and variety, reaching out to various ethnicities, genders, and branching out beyond some of our definitions of academia to other academics as well. So I'm really happy and honored that the first person that I asked to be a keynote speaker accepted, and I'm welcoming Mary Kenney, who is an award-winning author of books, video games, and comic books. She is bisexual, and her work has received nominations from GLAAD as she pushes for more thoughtful and frequent inclusivity in stories. She is a writer on Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Her first book, Gamer Girls, 25 Women Who Built a Video Game Industry, was released this past July to glowing reviews from Kirkus, Booklist, and more. She was a lead writer on Telltale's The Walking Dead series and has writing credits on a dozen other video games. She also has written comic books set in the universes of Godzilla, My Pretty Pony, and Read Only Memories. She studied in NYU's graduate game design program and teaches narrative design at Indiana U. Before making games, she was an award-winning journalist with bylines in the New York Times, Salon, and Kotaku. So let's give a warm Zoom welcome to Mary Kenney.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and chatting with everybody. This is great.
Yes, and thank you for working with us for scheduling purposes. Admittedly, some of us have been here for 10 hours already, and we have heard a lot of talks. Now, maybe for a fresh take of asking you, is there a difference between portraying bisexuality and bisexual characters in video games versus other types of media?
Absolutely. The biggest difference between writing video games and writing anything else is a question of the user's agency, right? So when you are handing somebody a video game, they are driving themselves through that narrative versus any other kind of media. They're kind of passively taking it in film and TV. In a book, they have some more control over it, but even in a book or a comic book, it is much more, it is more of a passive receiving of information. In a video game, you are kind of driving your own story. And so there are a lot of different depictions of bisexuality and bisexual characters. We have what we call non-player characters, which is any character that is not the player. And writing bisexual non-player characters is pretty similar to writing a bisexual character in anything else. You want all the same considerations, the way that you want to portray them, what is their life like, what is their romantic life like, so on and so forth. With the player character, though, you have to also weigh in, what does that mean in the context of this game? If this is a linear game where the player doesn't have any choices over the story, then how do we portray that this is a bisexual character? How do we reference it? How do we reference it in a way that feels natural and like you would with any other character? If it's a game where there are choices, where the player can choose to pursue different kinds of relationships, like Life is Strange or The Walking Dead or any Telltale game, now we have to offer you different options, let you know that those are all romantic options, and say this is your character, but they are also bisexual. So there's just a lot more that goes into it to let the player know these are options you have and this is who your character is, but you still have some say over it.
Excellent. And we will be getting back to some of these ideas that you presented as we go along. I was thinking about this audience here, a lot of academic researchers, and a lot of people who work with bisexual people, whether it's through support groups or entertainment or whatnot. And also, I'll fully admit, I maybe do not separate the art from the artist either way. But
Sure.
I'm just wondering here, how can lived experiences for writers, actors, and other creatives shape a piece of media?
So we all in creative work bring our own beliefs and our own biases, right? Every time, even ones we might not know we have. So we're always bringing our lived experience in every in everything we do, in the way that we see the world, and the way we think the world should be, and the way that we think it is. That's just always true in creative work. So lived experience is so important because no group is a monolith. Bisexual people are not a monolith. So I think, accurately portray the life of a bisexual white woman from the Midwest in the United States. Like that is my lived experience, right? So I'm pretty confident writing that character. But there are a lot of other identities that can intersect with bisexuality in ways that are different from my lived experience. So it's really important for me to do as much research as I can, to read other perspectives than my own. That's always true when I'm writing anything, but even when writing bisexual characters, even as a bisexual person. And it's great to have other people, kind of behind the camera, whether it's actors or other designers or artists or whoever, who I can also bounce ideas off of. Does this feel authentic to you? Does this feel right to you? I've worked with a lot of actors at this point in my career, and they always have interesting things to say, in response to my scripts that is, yes, this is it. This feels accurate. This is right. Let's go do this. And other times it's feedback that this is close, but this isn't quite how I would say this, or I'm not really sure what the motivation is here. And then we workshop it and we fix it. So having other people in the room who also have that lived experience, who you can talk things through with them, is just so incredibly valuable. It also just helps not to be the only bisexual person in the room, especially if you have a bisexual protagonist, because you will be defending a lot of creative choices and there's nobody else who can back you up if you're the only one there. So also having other people there, whether it's other writers or the actor or whoever who shares that experience, can say, yes, it's not just her. Like it's also, I also share this experience. I know exactly what she's talking about. And then we all know that we're kind of pointed in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to hear that you could find like-minded people and shared experiences. But maybe to pick on you yourself, how does your identity affect you creatively, or maybe the creative process?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we all bring our beliefs to our work, right? There are things that I think, it would be better if the world was more like this. It sucks that the world is like this. And other people might see the world differently. There are very few instances where there is one objective truth. We all bring our own lens to everything. So the ways in which my identity impacts me are many and varied, but to focus exclusively for a minute on bisexuality, for me, what it means is when I'm coming to a creative project, one of the first things I'm thinking about is, who are these different characters? Who might they have romantic entanglements with, whether they're long-term or not? And that can be fodder for drama. That is a possibility in any story. Sometimes there won't be any romance, and that's fine. Sometimes it's just it's just one of those lenses that I bring to a project where I'm not assuming that every character is going to be heterosexual going in. And I think this is actually a strength. I go in saying, I don't know. I don't know who all these characters are. I need to figure out who they might be attracted to, because that might affect character dynamics and how they bounce off one another. So that's my big one. I roll in to a project and I see opportunities to add that diversity, and also just kind of consider, does a character shift? Even does a character learn something about their sexuality over the course of a story? And I'm always looking at it through that lens, because it was such a big part of my life, was realizing I was bisexual as an adult. So I'm sure other characters can go through that as well. I also, because I myself am bisexual, I am very open and flexible with change. So I've worked on projects where two actors just had chemistry that bounced off the page. And maybe they were just supposed to be two guy friends. This is in an indie game I worked on. And they were supposed to be two guy friends. And then listening to them talk to each other, I was like, I think they have to be boyfriends. They're just flirting the whole time. So I think also being open to those shifts as well, when it makes the most sense for the story and for the characters, is another strength. It's just looking at the world in a way that other writers might not, and I like it. It works for me.
Mary here has a pretty good following on Twitter, and one day the prompt was, if you had to, what can you just talk about immediately? And Mary's snap response was, how to write gay characters and not get fired. Of course, we stole that quip for the title of this talk here. And,
yeah.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Go for it.
I was just going to say, I'm glad that you have imparted some of your identity onto some of your characters, because I imagine when we turn around how people play these video games, they might be role models or at least some thought processes or images that we could think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot about me growing up in rural Indiana in a very small religious town, and how important it was for me as a kid to just see bisexual characters, to see gay characters, to see just people who were not like the people that I knew in my life, who were going to my church, who were making, snap judgments about me when I started to figure out my sexuality, and then was uncomfortable with it for years because of that upbringing. So media has so much power to shape how people see themselves. And I think that, we have to wield that power for good. and this is a really good opportunity. If you're trying to figure out what your sexuality is and you get to play as a bisexual character, that can be really, really powerful. That can really help you figure out what direction you want to go in next, even if it's not exactly, the one that ends up being the right one. Having that room to explore in a fictional setting where there are no stakes, like you could turn off the video game at any time, is great. And that's what I'm coming to every project thinking.
Awesome. I'm glad you're so dedicated. Coming into this, I was reminiscing about your book, Gamer Girls, the 25 women who built the video game industry. And in it, you tell stories from arguably the beginnings of the video game industry. And I know you'd like to take a long view and historical context of things. But for this particular moment, this particular crowd, how has the depiction of bisexuality and bisexual characters changed in the past 10, 20, maybe 30 years?
Yeah, this question is fresh on my mind because a friend and I recently watched Rent and went, things have changed a little bit since Rent came out. And this is one example, obviously, but it reminded me, the trope is that the bisexual character is always the most sexualized character. They're attracted to everybody and they're never in a committed relationship, and they're, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But the idea that bisexual people can't commit and don't want to commit, I know absolutely hurt me when I was in my 20s. I had multiple friends tell me they would never want to date a bi person, even including gay people, including lesbian. Like, people tell me they would never want to date a bi person because we just can't settle down. We're never truly happy. And I was like, that's not me. Like, I'm a I'm a person who is, I'm a monogamous dater, and that's it. That's how I live my life. So tropes like that really do also have this harmful effect, and that's kind of all we got for years. Was just, there is one type of bisexual character and that's it, and they're often the butt of jokes, and that's all you get. And now we're more and more seeing characters that being bisexual is a big part of their life, but it's much more nuanced. It's much more discovering that they are in love with different people of different genders. It is just more honest. And I think that's because a lot of the writers and a lot of the actors are also identifying as bisexual now, and can bring their own lived experience and say, it's not just this one thing. Like, it's adults trying to navigate relationships. That's what it is. And it is just as diverse as any other type of relationship. Some people are monogamous, some people are polyamorous, and there's no one way to be bisexual. So we're getting a lot more diversity of just what it means to be bisexual, to date as a bisexual person, to marry as a bisexual person. And that's great. It's really wonderful to see. We're also just getting more stories of characters realizing they're bi or being very casual about being bi in the course of the story. One of the depictions I really love right now is the animated Harley Quinn show. It's really good. I'm like, this gets it. Yeah, these are like best friends who then fall in love. Yes, that happens all the time. And it makes perfect sense to me. It's really getting better and better, and it's really great to see.
Yes, indeed. And when you have a show like that that has great art, great writing, there's just so much love about it. Perhaps going slightly off script a bit, do you find that with working with other creatives, such as forgetting the names, or maybe folks who are designing the narratives and also the voice actors, etc.
Mhm.
Have there been more of a diversity in those ranks as well?
Yeah, definitely. Certainly in terms of voice acting, I mean, even compared to 10 years ago, the emphasis on we need to cast somebody with lived experience is much more than it used to be. It used to be we can get any actor to do anything because it's voice acting. Like we're never going to see them. And nowadays it is, best practice and common practice to know we need to get someone who matches the character that they are playing. We need to get someone with that experience. And, I guess to reiterate it, um, it helps so much. It's just an actor can bring to that role the perspective that you need to be able to write that role well, to be able to edit the script on the fly to make it more authentic. Because you never want to write a character who people who belong to the same groups as that character go, this feels tropey. This feels like someone who didn't do their research, who doesn't know anybody like me, who doesn't, and that just it sucks for them, it sucks for us, it sucks for everybody involved, and we don't want to do it. And the way to avoid something like that is to have writers and creators and actors who also belong to that group or those groups, and people who have real decision making power and can say, yes, this is great, let's go with this, or no, this is not great, we need to workshop this, we need to change this concept. It is really important. It's how we tell authentic stories.
Awesome. I'm glad I'm getting a sense of optimism here. Um, I'm thinking of the audience again. I mean, we have a lot of young researchers who are maybe finishing up their undergrad, going into grad school around that age. And maybe they're not going to necessarily follow in your footsteps of video game writing, but just in more general, what advice do you have for introducing LGBTQIA plus characters in your work?
I would say one of the questions that you face when you are including an LGBTQIA character is how do I get this into the narrative? Like if this is a character who shows up for 10 seconds and orders a bagel at a coffee shop, how am I going to depict that they are also, also this, whatever it is I'm trying to depict? So I guess my biggest piece of advice is you don't always have to wedge in like a loud line of dialogue. That's the way we do it when we can't think of anything else, is just like, oh, by the way, I'm bi, and then they just like run off screen. But there are so many other ways. I saw recently a comic that one of my friends drew. It's she had a character in the background who had the bisexual flag just like tattooed on her ring finger. And it was such a beautiful, subtle way to show something like that. This is a character who doesn't have any dialogue. So look at other ways. Like, can the clothes be wearing? They are wearing. I can't talk. Sorry, but are the clothes that they are wearing? Do they have, some depiction of different groups they belong to? Like, we all love T-shirts that have phrases on them. Could something like that, show off their identity and how they're proud of their identity? Could they be out with their partner and they're holding hands or whatever? There are just so many ways to show these characters, and it doesn't just have to be main characters. It's also the worlds that you're building. When you're building a video game, you are building an entire space for someone to explore. That's another big difference between us and say television or movies, is the camera is only showing you one thing at a time, but in a video game we're just building a whole big space and then you get to explore it, and we need to fill that space with characters. You might never see all those characters. You probably won't. There's simply too many. But how can we fill that space with a diverse cast? Some of them may never have lines. They're just wandering around living their lives. Thinking about, say, Spider-Man, we had to build a whole New York City. New York City is full of people. New York City is full of people of many ethnicities and genders and sexual orientation. So how can we show all that just in the ways that they're walking around the city and what they're wearing and what they're saying to each other that you might overhear? So thinking about it in every corner of what you're doing and how you can do it in a way that feels authentic and good, and like these are living, breathing people who aren't necessarily revolving around the protagonist. That would be my advice, is just think of every character as their own person with their own entire life, And that will just give you so many avenues to show off who they are, what they care about, even if they get 2 seconds of screen time.
Oh, indeed. And I bet for us who, depending on where we live and whatnot, work and live with a diverse group of people, playing a video game also with a diverse cast, it probably does feel more immersive and more realistic. Also going back to your book, you have some stories of groundbreaking moments where the women create stories maybe in the romance genre. There may be moments where they market games for girls, and it turns out girls play video games. Who knew?
I knew. Some other people knew, but
And
not enough people knew. Yeah.
and you know, pink is great, but not everything had to be pink. And I'm guessing I'm just fishing for an analogy here with the queer community and the queer topics. How would you approach suggesting queer characters in a collaborative effort?
So, what you need to do is know your audience. That's the easiest way to get people on board with your pitch. So, for example, when we're doing Walking Dead, the comics have a very diverse cast of characters. So when we're making the video game, we say the audience, this is what the audience expects. The audience has come to expect a diverse set of characters. And they expect, you know, again, this is a little bit easier when you're working on something that already has an established IP, but, you know, this is an IP that has rich stories about the ways that people interact with each other romantically after they break up, children and childbirth and family and rearing a family. That's all very important to this IP. So when we're building a video game and we're also looking at these themes, we want to do the same thing, and maybe even show characters that haven't been shown in the comic or the TV show, but that still honor those ideas of a diverse cast, a bunch of people thrown together trying to build a family. What does it mean to be a family in a world like this? And that's how we get to some of the most beloved characters. In The Walking Dead, the final season, which was the 4th season Telltale Games did of the 4th and final season, it's in the name of The Walking Dead. You know, it was a huge theme that, like, trying to build a family and have a family years after the apocalypse is breaking out or has broken out and all we're focused on is survival. Now, how do we settle down and have a home again? And that led to the storyline that I wrote, which was the main character, her name is Clementine, meeting and falling in love with a girl named Violet. And the two of them, by the end of the story, are basically raising a little boy together. That's a family dynamic. And so we had to explore what that looked like. How do these 3 people interact with each other? How do they express their love for each other? It's, you know, it's a unique family dynamic, but it's also not that unique. That's something we see in the real world all the time. So now we're taking this authentic real world thing and plopping it into a zombie apocalypse. So that's the kind of stuff you want to look for. How can we honor the expectations of the audience? How can we still have authentic lived experiences, even in a fantastic world that can be fantasy, sci-fi, zombie apocalypse, whatever? And, you know, how can we show a more diverse audience of players that they belong here too? That this is a world that also includes them. And that is by having a more diverse cast. That's how to pitch it. In my experience, the best way to get a pitch to greenlight is to be enthusiastic about it, to talk about how the audience will love it, and to talk to the people that you are pitching to about why they're going to love this character. This character owns. This character is good at this, and this. This is what they do for the protagonist. This is how, you know, we express their identity, and it's going to be awesome. And everybody goes, "Oh my god, it is going to be awesome!" And then it's greenlit. That's it.
That's great. I've been finding in various academic fields, just if there's like students watching this, how to do a sales pitch is such a big skill. I mean, you could learn a lot, but at some point in your life, you have to sell yourself in terms of making yourself look good, making your ideas look good. And also talking more broadly about what you were saying now, I'm so glad that you all are looking into these variety of stories. Here at the conference, we have had several sessions talking about bisexuality of families. I mean, for one thing, people grow older and they meet and they fall in love and apparently have children and whatnot, and they still want to have that bisexual identity. And it's great that we could also see this through the lens of your art.
Mhm. Yeah, a story that always stuck with me in college. I was part of a panel through our, it was our LGBTQ center on campus, and the way the panel worked was they would pull together as many different sexual orientations and if they could genders as they could for a panel of 5 to 7 people, and then professors could request that you come and visit their class. And the idea was the students could ask anything, anything in their hearts and minds. So we were warned in advance, like, hey, this can get a little intense. So if you don't want to do that, that's fine. You don't need to volunteer for the panel. But I was like, I can take it. So I volunteered. And I got some gnarly questions, but I rolled with it. And I think it was still a really positive experience. But one of the stories that stuck with me, I was on a panel, and one of the other people on the panel was a man who was in his early 70s. And he said he is a gay man. He's been a gay man his whole life. He knows he's a gay man. And when he was in his late 20s, he fell in love with a woman, and he loved her with all his heart, and he married her, and they were married for 30 years. And she eventually passed away from cancer, and now he is dating again, and he is dating exclusively men. He sees her as the love of his life, and his identity is that he is a gay man, and that's fine. That all exists together. And for me, that was just such a big moment in, there are so many lived experiences that, even the labels that we love just can't fully capture. Like, if you really want to understand who a person is, it's just talking to them and understanding who they are. And I think that's also true in writing characters. It's never just simple. People are so much more nuanced than we sometimes give them credit for. And that really kind of opened up for me creatively, just being able to talk to this guy. The characters do change, that they realize things about themselves as they grow older, that their family dynamics might change. Just like you just said, having kids might change the whole equation. There's just a lot in our lives that is constantly changing, both in how we see ourselves and how we're relating to other people. And I think, the work that you're all doing here is so important as part of that, is understanding not how we expect people to live, but how they are actually living.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to wipe a couple of tears from my eyes. Oh, man.
Sorry.
Oh, no.
Sorry, gotcha.
Yeah, I know, it really did. Yeah, earlier today we had some various speakers maybe talk about advising our community to broaden our definitions, maybe not completely tie ourselves to the word bisexual, talk about pansexuals, prosexuals. Maybe on the Twitter space, you might have seen the alliance between bisexuals and the ace community, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
I think that's so important. I feel like I've been doing a lot of soul searching just personally about that this year. And if I was being completely accurate, I would probably call myself pansexual. But the word bisexual means so much to me because it's how I came out, initially, that that's the one I'm still using. But it is important to stay open to again, there's just so many different ways that people relate to other people, and none of them is better or worse than another, unless you're being hateful and awful, then that's worse. But everything else, the ways that we love each other, it can't all fall under one definition. We're all just way too nuanced and complicated for that.
yes, and again, I appreciate the variety of thoughts and characters that are going into this. I think for a moment, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm going to pretend to be the role of the evil, pessimistic producer.
Awesome.
And referring maybe again back to older stories about would romance games sell? Do we have a target audience for this? So, and bringing this back up to present times, how have audiences responded to depictions of LGBT plus Q characters in your work?
Well, first of all, the way that we in video games define what a video game is can sometimes be too narrow. The most popular video games in the world right now are mobile games. Everybody has a smartphone. Mobile games are very, very popular. They have a huge player base. The majority of that player base is women. It is women above the age of 30. And that is not what we usually think of when we think of gamers, right? That's not the stereotypical image of a gamer, but it is a huge portion of our audience, right? Because mobile games count. Those are video games. And a ton of those video games do have romantic storylines. They take the I have a lot of friends and mentees who got their start in romance mobile games, or have gone back and do that full time now, even if they worked in AAA or wherever else. AAA is just like blockbuster titles, just FYI. But a lot of people I know have worked there, and they are taking on the structure of romance novels. That's why they're so popular. It's like a romance novel, but you get to pick who you smooch. You don't have to hope the character picks your favorite character, because you're just going to do it yourself. So they're enormously popular. They are among the top downloaded apps on the App Store consistently. There's a lot of money in it. Like there are tons of statistics that tell us audiences are really into this. And then there are entire genres built around the idea. Romance is a genre just like anything else, right? It's a genre like action is and adventure is and everything else. And romance games do well. There are entire genres like the otome genre. There are studios like Ruby Party that's what they do. This is what they make. BioWare is famous for writing a bunch of romantic storylines within other genres. It's just a popular storytelling device. And that doesn't mean every video game needs to be a romance, needs to have romance in it, but you know, it works. People like it. People like when characters interact with one another in ways that we can recognize, and we like rooting for characters or rooting against characters getting together. It's another tool for drama. But I think also, you know, expanding out the way that we look at romantic relationships is also how we create fresh content and authentic content. If you look at, you know, the show Our Flag Means Death, it got very, very popular. There haven't been many shows like it, and that's great. Audiences love it. They snapped it up, and that also helps with your pitching. Is like audiences are really hungry for this, so maybe we should give it to them. Cranky producer. That's my counterpoint.
I'll just double check the accountant and get back to you on that. In your wonderful pitch, you did hit one of the key words that we did have a question in the audience. Do Japanese otome games offer more opportunities for representing LGBTQIA characters? And in answering that, please define us what otome means.
Yeah, otome games very simply are making romance is one of the core mechanics of the game. It's a story-based game, and it is targeted toward women. That's all it means. That is the meaning of the genre. Most of these games do include romantic elements, choosing between characters. I think, yeah, any video game genre where you are choosing between romantic partners, totally, there's so much more opportunity to show more diverse genders and romantic relationships, because it is one of the core mechanics of the game. One of the things that's harder is if your characters, that's not part of the core gameplay, but we still want to show it. So, for example, Overwatch is not a story-based game. It is just an arena shooter. You drop in and you fight each other, and that's it. And yet, as you know, the character who is on the box, she is a gay woman. Like she is in a relationship with a woman. And we know this because it has been now in shorts and in comics and in the multimedia. So there are ways to show it in every genre. Again, it's just, we're building out worlds, we're building out characters, and people of all genders and sexualities can exist in those worlds if we go the extra effort. But yes, if you make relationship building and finding a romantic partner part of your core gameplay, way easier to show that. Much dating sims are miles ahead of just about everything else in terms of like showing the different showing different depictions of romantic relationships and showing more diverse ones.
Speaking more about showing, have you ever played Unpacking?
Yes, I
Uh,
love unpacking. Yeah, it's
and
great.
basically, there's this game for the audience. There's this game where you literally are unpacking boxes, and as you're unpacking these characters' belongings, you actually learn more about them. And you don't even meet the characters really until the end. And
Mhm.
it seems to be a nice narrative where you could show the player what the people are about through various objects. For instance, we were joking around before this hour about your grow lights in the background there.
Yeah, no, I think unpacking is a great example of you don't always need dialogue or even somebody to be in a romantic relationship. I think that's another common mistake, not mistake, but misconception that some writers have is that the only way to show LGBTQ characters is um to have them be in a relationship on screen. Like I have to see their partner to understand who they are. And that's simply not true. The items they have in their house, the flag they have hanging in the background of their office. Like there are so many ways that we can depict this. Unpacking is a fantastic example. In that game, you're unpacking boxes in different apartments or homes that this person has lived in. And there's one level I remember specifically, like the main character, who again, you're right, there's no dialogue, you don't meet or see the characters throughout the game. It's just unpacking her stuff. She's moving in with a guy and I hate him. Like I hate him
Everyone
because
did.
everyone hates him because he didn't make any room for her stuff. And I'm like, that's all I have to know. And so there's so many ways to show off character. If you know who the character is, you don't need to just say what it is. You can show it in all these different ways. And that's true of our romantic lives and our identities and our genders as well.
You knew I was going to do this. Like, I played video games, obviously. It's like, how often do I get the chance to talk to someone in the industry? So, of course, I was thinking about games like Stardew Valley and Life is Strange 3 True Colors, which you mentioned at the beginning of the
Mhm.
hour. But I was hoping you could still expand upon these narratives where the protagonist is given a choice of romantic partners, and how
Mhm.
does that affect immersion, representation, what have you?
Yeah, for my money, I mean, the thing for all of us to keep in mind that most of us know, but we can still kind of trip up with it sometimes. A bisexual main character is not less bisexual if they're dating, if it's a woman dating a man, it doesn't make them any less bisexual, right? So, in my humble but firm opinion, it's still representation, right? It is also just putting the player in this person's shoes. So something like Life is Strange, there are two main types of video game characters. There are video game characters that are a complete blank slate. They have no personality. They don't have a face. You usually make their face. They don't have a name. They don't have anything. And those characters are not great vehicles for representation because the player's just going to make whoever they want. Although they can be. That's a whole separate discussion on how to make character creators more representative. But anyway, and then the other genre, which is where you get your Life is Strange characters, your Telltale Games characters, things like that, where it is a character who has a personality and then also has choices as well in how they're going to progress through the story. But they also have a backstory and personality traits and flaws and weaknesses. And all the Life is Strange games are like this. And even if you, as a bisexual protagonist, don't choose to be in a relationship, you're still bisexual. That hasn't changed. I think it's still a really good way to show off identity and to show kind of just to let the player be in this person's shoes for a while. This might not be an experience they ever have in real life, but you can relate to someone who is different from you, and that's great. That's one of the really great things about video games.
Awesome, thank you. Um, Also maybe a bit um self-centered because I'm a fellow teacher, and I'd be remiss if I didn't pick your brain about this as well. But in the craft of teaching and creating a learning environment, what advice do you have for creating an inclusive environment in your classroom?
Yeah, so I always have a discussion with my students at the top of the semester that is we're talking about art, and that means we're going to get into subjects like identity and romance and relationships and drama and how we all see the world and politics. They're going to come up. It's just going to come up. And so what I need you all to do is be able to have a really open, thoughtful conversation with each other. Do not, if you start insulting one another, you're getting banned from the classroom for the day. We're simply not going to do that. Hate speech, we are not going to put up with that. You will be banned from the classroom for the day. So I tamp down pretty hard on any form of bullying, which I think is important in all spaces. I also think it's very important in community management. But otherwise, say, I want you all to be honest. I don't want you to pretend you don't have beliefs and biases, because everybody has beliefs and biases. I have beliefs and biases. Some of you aren't going to agree with all of my beliefs in this class either. And that's important. That it should be what higher education is for, is being able to talk about this again in kind of a low stakes environment. Nobody's going to get hurt. Nobody's going to get fired, and really figure out how to relate to one another in these ways. Again, going back to my own experience on this panel in college, some of the questions that I got as a bisexual woman on this panel were hurtful, but I knew that going in. I could gear up for it, and being able to answer honest questions from people who weren't trying to hurt me, they just had a misconception, was, I think, in the long run, important. Like, they learned something from that. And that's kind of the environment that I try to foster in the classroom as well. But I also tell people, hey, here are some of the subjects we're going to be discussing. I give content warnings. If discussing this in this forum is going to be too much for you, let's just talk one-on-one after. You don't have to be in class that day. I think that's important as well, is giving people an out sometimes. Some topics people are just not in the right headspace to talk in a big group about. And I think being flexible with that is just really important to take care of our students as well. I have office hours are open. They can schedule them anytime. And that is part of it. Did something come up in class that was triggering for you? Did something come up that was hard for you? Do you need to talk it out in a smaller setting? And in my time teaching, it has happened a lot where people have come in later and said, I wasn't sure how to express this, but this is what I was feeling. And now we're able to talk about it in a really open way. And, I think that's what's really great about college is having the room and the space to figure out who you are and how you fit in the world, and who all these freaking other people are that aren't like you at all. And that's how I try to create that space. Does it work 100% of the time? I'm not sure anything does, but so far it's been working really well. So I like our space.
I'm glad to hear that you are very conscientious about that. I could tell you're a great teacher, and thinking about that, and building respect and empathy amongst the audience, and building this space in general. That's excellent.
Yeah.
I'm going to break the fourth wall a bit and let the audience know we're kind of winding down chronologically. So barring any questions from the audience, we might be finishing up soon. And of course, the big question on the minds of my colleagues at the moment is, what would you like to see change or continue to improve in how bisexuals are portrayed in the media going forward?
Yeah, I just want to continue seeing bisexual people in many different phases of life. We're not all, I'm going to go back to problematic tropes. So know that is a problematic trope. We're not all young, hot 19-year-olds who date everybody we see, right? That's not the extent of the bisexual experience. So what I am hoping for is that we continue to see bisexual people who are married, are in polyamorous relationships, are in open marriages, are raising kids, are the cool aunt. There are so many different ways that we exist in the world. And I would love to continue to see that going forward, and thoughtful discussions between different characters about it. Because, being a bisexual person comes with its own set of challenges. It's not as simple as just like, oh, we could just lump them in with all the gay characters. Like, no, we also face our own unique challenges. For example, again, just kind of dipping into my backstory, some of the most hurtful things that people have said to me came from the LGBTQ community. And I think it is important for our media to capture that as well, that this is not okay, that it is not okay to treat bisexual people this way. And that we're just people trying our best as well to exist in this world and to exist in healthy relationships, whatever they end up looking like. So that is my hope, my dream, my wish. We've made strides, and I would love to continue to see us make strides in what does it look like for a bisexual person to be in healthy relationships, in unhealthy relationships, and all in between. We have many lived experiences.
Indeed. And we've been talking a lot at this conference, and bringing people together like this is important to also share some of our negative experiences and let people know in various ways that they're not alone. But maybe on that branch of question, whatever, I've been kind of tiptoeing around this. So let me just ask it. How do you deal with that specific sector of the population that in recent years have been complaining about LGBT being forced inside plots and stories?
Yeah, it's not easy. So I'll already, show my cards a little bit. When you're creating media, you're going to get feedback. And one of the, in when I first started writing fiction, what people told me was, you just need to grow a thick skin. I don't think that's actually useful advice. That's not what you need to do. What you need to grow is a filter for good faith criticism and bad faith criticism. Good faith criticism is maybe my character arcs weren't that great, maybe my dialogue was unclear, maybe I had a problematic theme and I didn't even see it, it was just baked into my subconscious. So that kind of criticism is so important to grow both as a writer and a person. But it has to be filtered out from bad faith criticism. So when I would get criticism, or I see anything getting criticism that LGBTQIA people are being forced inside plots, to me that's already raising the bad faith criticism flag, right? It is beginning to flap in the breeze. And then if I dig into the criticism itself more, why do you feel this way? Maybe there is something there. Maybe you felt like actually the depiction was not good or helpful. Maybe it was a problematic depiction. Maybe, but that's pretty rare. Usually this group of people that you're talking about is just, I just don't want to see people like that in my stories. I can dismiss that. That's not good faith criticism. It's not going to change what I do. They are welcome to feel that and start a Twitter account about it and post about it, but it doesn't really affect what's going on behind the scenes. Some people are going to gel with the way that I see the world and the themes that I'm interested in, the characters I create, and some people will not. Whatever their reasons are, that's fine. Maybe just don't play my stuff. that's okay. So that's the truncated version of that long-winded answer is know how to sift through what is good faith and what is bad faith criticism. That is bad faith criticism. Believing that only one type of person or group or sexuality should be depicted in media is bad faith. That is typically somebody who doesn't want to see things that challenge their worldview, and that's not helpful. That's not what stories are built to do.
Thank you very much. Some of my colleagues have talked about online harassment and whatnot. I'm not going to dwell on that in this particular moment, but I just want to thank you for providing such a strong and thoughtful answer to what has really been on our minds. And as we wind down here, just kind of want to open it up to your brilliant self. If you could leave us with an inspirational take-home message or a mental nugget, what have you.
Yeah, I would say I think that researchers and people like me who work in entertainment, we so much of what we do goes hand in hand. We are both reflecting the world around us, and then we are shaping how people are interpreting the world around us. I think we're all kind of holding hands gently in that. And we are seeing more and more diverse people behind the scenes who are driving this research and interpreting this research and driving these stories and pitching these stories and creating these stories. And that is awesome. So I guess my kind of take home advice is, when you're doing this work, know that you are making a real difference, that there is still some little kid in rural Indiana who needs to see what you are working on, who needs to know that they are not weird or wrong or bad, that they are in fact normal and living a normal life. It's such important work, and it is just as important to take care of yourself, to know that this is deeply personal work, to take breaks when you need it, and to not burn out, because this work can be so draining. It can be hard to get feedback all the time, but ultimately what you're doing is for the greater good, is creating a more inclusive and thoughtful and loving society, and that's fantastic. That is good news for all of us who have to live in it.
And that's the pretty bow at the end. Thank you very much, Mary, for your time. That was the author of Gamer Girls. Get it wherever fine books are sold. If people want to find you on the internet, so where can they find you?
The easiest is going to be Twitter. My handle is at Mary K News. And if not that, I also have a website, marykgames.com. You can contact me through that website. It lists all my contact information. Those are the two.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks to the audience, and get you all back to your weekend. Bye.